Grace Williams stood in the lobby of Sterling Tech Industries, waiting for her husband to finish his meeting. At 35, she had learned to be patient with David's demanding schedule as the company owner. What she hadn't learned was how to ignore the stares. She was used to them by now. The only black woman in spaces like this. The curious glances when she mentioned she was Mrs. Sterling. The whispered questions about how they met. A group of young executives gathered near the reception desk, their laughter carrying across the marble floor. Grace recognized the tall one in the navy suit. Brandon Chen. David had mentioned him. Rising star in sales. Ambitious, maybe too ambitious. Brandon noticed her standing alone and nudged his colleagues. Grace saw them whispering, saw the smirks forming. Her stomach tightened with familiar dread. Brandon walked toward her, his friends following like a pack. He carried a cup of soda from the break room, condensation dripping down the sides. "Excuse me," he said, his voice dripping with false politeness. "Are you lost? The service entrance is around back." Grace's jaw clenched. "I'm waiting for someone." "Sure you are," Brandon said, and his friends snickered. "Let me guess, cleaning crew doesn't start until 5, right?" "I think you should walk away now," Grace said quietly, her voice steady despite the anger rising in her chest. Brandon moved closer, invading her space. "You know what I think? I think people need to know their place. This is a professional environment. We have standards here." He raised the cup of soda above her head, his intention clear. A prank, a humiliation. Something to put her in what he thought was her place. Grace stood perfectly still, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing her flinch. "Here's your gift," Brandon said, starting to tip the cup. "That's my wife." The voice cut through the lobby like thunder. David Sterling stood at the elevator, his face a mask of cold fury. At 42, he rarely raised his voice. He didn't need to. Everyone in the building knew that quiet tone meant someone's career was about to end. The color drained from Brandon's face. The cup shook in his hand, soda sloshing over the rim onto his expensive shoes. His friends scattered like roaches when the lights come on, suddenly very interested in their phones. David walked slowly across the lobby, each step deliberate. Grace had seen him close billion-dollar deals with that same controlled intensity. But this was different. This was personal. "Mr. Sterling," Brandon stammered. "I didn't know. I thought she was—" "You thought what exactly?" David's voice was ice. "You thought my wife was what? Someone you could humiliate? Someone beneath you?" The lobby had gone silent. Every employee within earshot had stopped moving, stopped breathing. This wasn't just drama. This was a lesson being taught. Brandon's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "It was just a joke, sir. We were just having fun." "Fun," David repeated. He turned to Grace, his expression softening. "Sweetheart, are you all right?" Grace nodded, touching his arm gently. She could feel the tension in him, the rage he was holding back for her sake. "I'm fine, David. Let's just go home." But David wasn't finished. He turned back to Brandon, and his voice carried across the entire lobby. "My wife has a master's degree in social work from Columbia. She runs a non-profit that provides job training to underprivileged youth. She's helped more than 3,000 people find employment in the last 5 years. She volunteers at the Children's Hospital every Saturday. She speaks 4 languages. And she has more integrity in her little finger than you have in your entire body." Brandon's face was crimson now. Sweat beaded on his forehead. "But none of that matters," David continued, "because even if she was the cleaning crew, even if she was here to deliver packages, even if she was here for any reason at all, she deserves respect. Every human being who walks through these doors deserves respect. That's not just company policy. That's basic decency." He looked around the lobby at the gathered employees. "Let me be very clear. This company was built on innovation and excellence, but it will never, ever be built on the degradation of others. If you can't treat every person with dignity, regardless of their position or background, you don't belong here." David turned back to Brandon. "You're fired, effective immediately. Security will escort you out. Your belongings will be mailed to you. But, sir," Brandon pleaded, "I have a mortgage, car payments. My girlfriend just moved in." "You should have thought about that before," you decided to pour soda on someone's head for entertainment, David said flatly. Actions have consequences, Brandon. Today you learn that lesson. Security appeared as if summoned by thought. Two large men in crisp uniforms flanked Brandon, who looked like he might cry. His friends had vanished completely, probably updating their resumes. As Brandon was led away, David addressed the remaining employees. Anyone else here think it's funny to humiliate people? Anyone else want to make jokes about where someone belongs? My door is open. Come talk to me now and save us all some time. Silence. Absolute silence. David took Grace's hand. Let's go home. In the car, Grace finally let out the breath she'd been holding. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did, David said simply. Grace, when I met you 7 years ago at that community center, you were teaching kids how to build computers from donated parts. You barely looked at me. You were too focused on making sure every child understood the lesson. Do you remember what you said when I finally got your attention? Grace smiled despite herself. I said you were blocking the projector. You did. And I fell in love right then. Because you didn't see a wealthy CEO. You saw someone in the way of what mattered. Those kids mattered. Your work mattered. That's who you are. He pulled the car over, turning to look at her. I've spent my whole life building this company, making money, acquiring assets, expanding markets. But you taught me what actually matters. People matter. Dignity matters. Kindness matters. Everything else is just noise. Grace felt tears welling up. I hate that this still happens, that people still look at me and make assumptions. I know, David said softly, and I can't change the world, but I can control what happens in my company. I can make sure that anyone who works for me understands that cruelty has no place there. Brandon made his choice. Now he lives with it. They drove home in comfortable silence. That evening, Grace received dozens of messages from Sterling Tech employees, apologies, support, stories of their own experiences with discrimination, gratitude for David's stand. But the most meaningful came from a young black intern named Marcus. Mrs. Sterling, I saw what happened today. I've been thinking about quitting because I never felt like I belonged here. But watching Mr. Sterling defend you, seeing him fire a senior executive for disrespect, it changed something for me. It made me believe that maybe things can be different. Thank you for standing there with Grace. You showed me how to handle hate without becoming hateful. That's the real gift. Grace read the message to David that night as they sat together on their porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and amber. He called it a gift, she said quietly. What happened today? David pulled her close. Maybe it was, not the cruelty, but the chance to show people what we stand for. The chance to draw a line and say, this far and no further. Sometimes the worst moments become the most important lessons. Grace rested her head on his shoulder. Your mother still doesn't approve of me, you know. I know, David said. She'll come around. And if she doesn't, that's her loss, not ours. I didn't marry you for anyone's approval. I married you because you make me want to be better than I am. 6 months later, Sterling Tech launched a comprehensive diversity and inclusion program. Grace helped design it, drawing on her years of non-profit work. The company became known not just for its technology, but for its commitment to creating a workplace where everyone truly belonged. Brandon Chen never worked in tech again. Word spread quickly about why he was fired. Some people said David was too harsh, others said he was exactly right. Grace didn't spend much time thinking about it. She had work to do, kids to help, a world to change one person at a time. Years later, people would still talk about the day the CEO's wife was almost pranked in the lobby, about the firing that followed, about the message it sent. But Grace remembered something else. She remembered David's hand in hers, steady and sure. She remembered the intern who found hope in her dignity. She remembered that sometimes standing still in the face of hate is its own kind of courage. And she remembered that love, real love, isn't about grand gestures. It's about someone seeing you, truly seeing you, and saying without hesitation, that's my wife, that's my partner, that's the person I choose every single day. That was the real gift. And it was worth more than all the soda in the world. If this story moved you, please like, share and subscribe for more stories about standing up for what's right. Drop a comment below. Have you ever witnessed someone take a stand against injustice? How did it change you? Your stories matter and inspire others to be brave.